This video contains spoilers for the brand new series of Shaun the Sheep, which isn't something I thought I'd ever say. The Shaun series is something that I absolutely loved as a kid and just haven't seen in years. I didn't even expect it to kind of return, but it has with a brand new series that is very faithful to the original. But in this particular series, we go from stuff like the farmer puts up a shelf to Shaun travels the multiverse and ends up in the Wallace and Gromit universe. So yeah, let's do a quick review. So we open up with a new remix of the Shaun the Sheep theme with a cool kind of more synthy sound to it. And the episodes themselves, I think for me, having not watched them in years, like I remember the early season 1 episodes the most, and jumping from just that to this is pretty seamless, keeping the episodes very kind of simple for the most part, with the exception of the end. It's that thing of if it ain't broke, don't fix it, you know? The main thing that sticks out about the series is how genuinely funny it is. It really maintains the comedy of the original, and because there's no dialogue, it's just so versatile. It's like old-timey Laurel and Hardy silent films and stuff which relied on this relatable physical comedy, like the farmer standing on a plug. But they communicate so much through the physical performance of, you know, these claymation characters. There's stuff like the anxiety of the shelf episode where it's just Bitzer holding up a shelf, and because you don't have the dialogue, you have to rely on really good cinematography and directing to convey what's happening to the audience. So although the plots are kind of simple, there are some really good shots in here and stuff that is basically film worthy. There's some little bite-sized moments throughout the series which are nice, like the Shooting Stars episode, and although it's a very simple concept, it kind of ends with Shaun and Bitzer having this wholesome friendship, and the difference between watching it as a kid and now is definitely that I related to Shaun back then, and now it's very much Bitzer who you're on the side of, and the finale leans into that as well. But I mentioned before that the cinematography and directing is very on point. There's one episode that is entirely shot through the farmer's ring doorbell, and it's already impressive enough to convey these stories through characters that don't speak, and then to have this kind of fixed camera angle for the whole episode is you know, it's really impressive, and props to the team that worked on it. The farmer being chucked around on top of a ladder in this episode, even though he's completely off screen, is once again one of the funniest moments. And it's pure voice acting, really, from John Sparks, who does them. And the same with Justin Fletcher, who does Shaun. They're very consistent and yet completely fresh and original each series. There's an episode where bees get into the farmer's kind of bee suit. But yeah, that's another really unique episode where the bees get into the suit and start kind of moving it around like a skinwalker or something. It's quite a terrifying concept if you think about that in real life. There's a mint bit where Bitzer watches who he thinks is the farmer go into the door, but the thing can't open the door, so it just kind of crumples up into a ball and goes through like the cat flap. In the power cut episode, we kind of venture into that horror territory again. There's some really funny moments in it because of how seriously the horror is played. It starts with a sheep going into the farmer's house as he goes to it like an award ceremony. So there's these moments where Bitzer and the farmer arrive at the house, and there's all these little tricks from horror films that he used, like the torch quickly flashing past like a room. Timmy's mother's standing like at the back of the room, and each time the torch goes past she gets closer. Yeah, it's borderline horror. It'll creep some kids out. As we get at the end of the series, there's an episode about Bitzer's father coming to visit him, and there's comedy in that it's just Bitzer but with glasses and a scarf. But it's always interesting to see them expand on these main characters, because we rarely do see it happen, and I like that they do it sparingly throughout the series. So that's a nice wholesome episode, I think, that just builds upon the characters a bit. And it's funny because the Shaun Bitzer dynamic, I think, is always the part of the series that I found the most interesting, which leads into Shirleyverse, which is the two-part finale of the series, which I don't think has really happened before. And what I really like about this is it's this shift into more kind of deep story, like movie territory. You've got the Shaun films, and this felt more like that. Even though it's pretty small and self-contained, the concepts that it explores are pretty massive. So there's been a series-long gag about Shirley, the big fat sheep that sits quietly in the background, having this infinite kind of mass of wool that you can produce anything from. And this has happened at different points across the whole series. So the creative team have kind of went into this thing of how expansive is Shirley's wool? Like, what, you know, what is it infinite? And what would happen if you were to go into it? So you've got this utterly bizarre, incredible concept that you can enter Shirley's wool and exit in different realities, and that Shirley is like the proxy for multiversal travel. And do you see the contrast in like the incredibly basic elements of the other episodes, and then there's just this. So the episode starts off like normal, where Bitzer is getting the flock to do all of their exercises and stuff, which irritates Shaun because he's sick of being ordered around and stuff. So he goes up to Shirley, who kind of gestures towards his massive wool. But Shaun dives into it, and we see these incredible surreal effects, and there's all kinds of echoes and colours that shows the infinite vast nature of the inside of Shirley. And then Shaun exits Shirley and everything looks the same, but we notice that Bitzer is absent from the picture. He goes round and everything is kind of gone to crap because Bitzer isn't there. The sheep have like no food, everything's kind of desolate, and he starts to realise that without Bitzer being there, life would not be very good. So looking at it now, this could have been a very basic episode where it's like, lesson learned, Shaun exits Shirley and embraces Bitzer again. But no, we have a bit of a twist with this being a two-parter, because Shaun exits Shirley and returns to what he thinks is his universe, only to find out that it isn't, and the farm is being run by the pigs. There's like enormous power plants with green smoke coming out of the farm and massive statues of pigs. It's kind of like Animal Farm or something, the book, and Shaun is utterly horrified, and it cuts to a to be continued, which has never happened before. It's so interesting to think about though that all of these universes that Shaun travels to exist, you know, so there is a Shirley in each of these universes, which there's a word for it in the Marvel films, I think, where a character is like omnipresent in every universe, and that is Shirley. Shaun jumps into him again, and it leads to a kind of intersection of Shirleys, and each one is like a doorway to a different universe. So we have a sequence of Shaun jumping in and out of every one. But interestingly, when Shaun does this, he kind of takes on the persona of the Shaun in that universe, if that makes sense. So, in one of the Shirleys, in this intersection thing, Shaun emerges with his original design from A Close Shave, the Wallace and Gromit film that introduced him. So this is kind of a big thing, because I've thought for a long time, just by default, that the Wallace and Gromit films and the Shaun the Sheep series aren't in the same world. But it's kind of been a heavily debated topic, especially since the farmer's appearance in Wallace and Gromit. But when I interviewed Nick Park about that, his answer was that that was done because they are very separate, and that is the whole joke. So it's very confusing to explain, but basically, Wallace and Gromit and Shaun, the series, are separate. This clearly demonstrates that, because Shaun in Wallace and Gromit's world looks like this. The Shaun in the series is, I mean, he's kind of characterized very differently, but this confirms it. I mean, you've got bits of Wendoline's wool comes out with him, and it's 30 years of Shaun as well since he appeared like this in that film. So it's really appropriate, and something I never expected they would actually venture into. But hopefully that's a clear enough answer, and they've now, in a way, opened the door to a Wallace and Gromit crossover. You imagine if they actually did something like that? Because Aardman have teased a hell of a lot that they have an interconnected, somewhat universe. Some films are, some are separate, with characters popping up in different ones, namely Feathers McGraw. But it's totally bizarre to think that like the most simple of those series has opened the door to the multiverse. But once again, there's just some really good direction and cinematography in this episode in particular. It even has more of a serious like score. The other episodes just have the, you know, the usual incidental music, but this one again is more filmic. You get like emotional beats and stuff, which doesn't usually happen in Shaun the Sheep. But the thing about this episode is you think you know where it's going, but it just kind of gets darker. We've been to a universe where there was no Bitsa, but in this universe, there's just nothing. The skies are grey, everything's boarded up like it's been abandoned for years. Nobody's there. And by that proxy, there's no Shirley to escape. And it's pretty deep stuff with that eerie kind of tinge, you know, like the old Wallace and Gromit, where there wasn't background characters and stuff, and people found it creepy because it was so empty. This is like that, but a whole universe, you know, there's nothing else. And again, you've got this really cool like shot of just Bits' whistle lying on the floor, old and rusty and stuff. But Shaun sits alone in the barn, and he just picks up and blows Bits' whistle. It's like the end of Titanic or something. And then just breaks down crying in this universe where there's just nothing, like infinite nothingness and darkness. And I'm like, whoa, they really went there, didn't they? And this is until Shaun finally looks up from this nightmare and Shirley is stood next to him again. It's unclear how this kind of happens. Is Shirley this interdimensional creature that just... But there was nobody there before now. Shirley's just there when he's needed. So he kind of composes himself and wipes the tears from his eyes and jumps in again. Doesn't believe he's actually back until the sheep doing the fitness kind of part to reveal Bitsa, and Shaun is like completely elated and runs up and embraces Bitsa, and then all of the sheep do after his traumatizing experience. And it's like, yeah, it comes back to such a basic concept of Shaun now appreciates Bitsa as a mate. And it kind of reminds us of what's often hailed as the best episode of SpongeBob at Band Geeks, where Squidward has, you know, his one moment where everyone supports him and stuff. And this is that for Bitsa. So it ends with happiness, but then we kind of pan over to Shirley smiling in the corner. It's wholesome, but there's this ominous twinge to it. And the very last scene is one of the pigs emerging from Shirley riding a goat. So it's now confirmed that entities from outside of Shaun's universe can enter it through Shirley.
They're starting to come through, and I can't stop them.
So that went on for a bit longer than I thought, given the completely unexpected contents. But Shaun Series 7 is on BBC iPlayer now if you're in the UK. In other countries, I think it's going to be announced soon by Aardman as to how it's been distributed. But honestly, after years of not seeing it, I think it's a pleasant surprise. And I like how true it stayed to itself, with that last episode veering into something more. And it makes us think, like, I really wouldn't mind a Shaun series with less episodes that were a bit longer and more kind of character focused and deep like this one was, because that was definitely the most enjoyable part. And yeah, let the comments commence. People can continue to debate the canonicity of Shaun the Sheep and Wallace and Gromit and where it all fits in. But yeah, it's a bit daft, but it's fun to speculate about at the end of the day. So leave your comments down below on what you thought of the series, if you've seen it. If you haven't, please watch it and subscribe to the channel for more content like this covering Aardman, Wallace and Gromit, Shaun, and everything in between. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.